Good afternoon, everybody. We are dealing here with some problems because the subway has just stopped and it's impossible to travel. But let me use this time and start maybe a bit later. So my name is Piotr Wróbel. I'm a history professor at our university. I hold the chair of Polish history, and because of this, I'm interested in Jewish issues as well. And I would like to start with some announcement and some formalities. So first of all, I would read the land acknowledgement. We wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron, Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to achieve the opportunity to work on this land. So thank you for this. Now, before I forget, I would like to start with an announcement, using this opportunity that we are not really rushing. I would like to tell you that on March the 23rd, between 9 and 11 a.m., and you will see in a moment why this is such a strange time, I'm hosting a scholar from the Museum of Polish Jews in Warsaw, Polin. His name is Zachary Mazur. He's an American from New York, but he works in Polin now. And during my seminar, hence this strange time, during my seminar that I have on a regular basis, he will deliver a lecture, the 1943 Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, Resistance and Survival in the Holocaust. He will also talk about the new exhibition on the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, and so we will combine both things. The center will announce this again and again. I understand, but just to be safe, and I'm afraid that it's so early that I may have not too many visitors, but it could be this could be interesting. Okay, so this is March the 23rd, our seminar. You are usually there, so. Yes. Oh, because, thank you. You see, this will take place at Sidney Smith Hall, room 1070. Yes, room 1070. You all know where Sidney Smith is, but just in case, 100 St. George Street. And when you are entering Sidney Smith Hall, you go to the left, and there are lecture rooms over there, and he will talk. March the 23rd. March the 23rd during our seminar. Thank you for this. And now let's return to our business. So I'm very happy that I can introduce Professor Kijek here, another person from Poland. So it's always nice. And I would like to do two things at the same time. I would like to introduce Professor Kijek, but I would like also to say 2 or 3 sentences about the center where he's coming from, because this is important. So the Center for Jewish Studies, or Jewish Department at the University of Wroclaw, is now one of the most vibrant Jewish studies centers in Poland, and probably in Europe as well. There are altogether about 30 scholars employed or working around the center, and they do a lot of very interesting things. Kamil Kijek is in charge of one of many programs they run. You probably know as well that Wrocław at that time, Breslau, was a very important Jewish studies center before World War II, that there was a Jewish theological seminary in Wrocław. There was a tradition. Wrocław was a very important academic center. Some associate this center with Dr. Alzheimer, but they did a lot of other important things. And after the war, for a long time, there were no Jewish studies at the University of Wrocław, but in the 1990s, they returned to this tradition and started building the center again. They became a full-scale Department of Jewish Studies formally in 2016. In 2017, they were officially named after Kat Taube, who I understand supported them as he always does very generously. And because of this, this is a really vibrant center. I think that if you are interested in these issues, you should go to their website. You can find them Googling Kamil Kijek simply, and there will be his department there. And you will see that some of the programs are extremely interesting, and you can really use them. And Professor Kijek is responsible for a project called The Last Polish Shtetl, the Jews of Dzierżoniów, in a local and transnational perspective, right? This is your project, one of several projects which are run there by many scholars. Now, Kamil Kijek completed his PhD in Warsaw at the Institute of History of the Polish Academy. And then he was very active, I have to say, traveling a lot. A list of places, fellowships, grants he got is really impressive. He was at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv University, University of Haifa. He was in New York and in Washington, of course, at the Holocaust Museum, in Germany, in Vienna, a very fine place to work. Yeah, but because there's nothing there in Vienna, so you have to work. So he was very active. Several years ago already, he published his main book, and I don't want to slaughter the title, even though I've read the book. The title in Polish is Dzieci modernizmu, świadomość i socjalizacja polityczna młodzieży żydowskiej w Polsce międzywojennej. Modernity's children, identity and political socialization of Jewish youth in interwar Poland. This is my translation, so probably the official translation is slightly different. And this book is very important for various reasons. Not only because this is a very good book and kind of new approach, so to speak. Professor Kijek is a sociologist, basically. So he had this approach, but also surprisingly, maybe this is my opinion, but I am ready to defend this opinion. Surprisingly, the interwar period of the history of Polish Jews, in my opinion, is neglected. And it's strange because this is a very important period. It's impossible to understand really fully the Holocaust in Poland without basic knowledge of the interwar years. But there are not too many books on this, right? I know that some scholars work on this very hard. I believe that Professor Casso will publish a book on this soon. But so far, we are in a difficult situation. This is why Professor Kijek's book is welcome. And today he is going to talk about transnationalism of Polish Jews in the first years after the Holocaust, sources, methods, and the relevance for today's global Jewish historiography. Thank you very much, Professor Kijek. The floor is yours. Thank you.
I'll give you one more second. Thank you. Out at the bottom so we can see. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having me here in Toronto and having opportunity to speak to you and to people who listen to us online. And thank you very much for very generous introduction. And yes, I will be speaking about the post-Holocaust, post-war period. So that is the part of my new project or the current book that I'm writing, which is about post-Holocaust history of 1945-1950. Then that will be the main, timeline of my talk. But actually, you will hear what already Professor Wroclaw has said: the relevance of not only of Holocaust but of interwar Polish Jewish history for understanding of the things that happened to Polish Jews in Poland after the Holocaust. And as you can see already in the title, this lecture will be not about the totality of the history of Polish Jews in the first years after the Holocaust, but a short proposal or invitation how it can be, in my opinion, researched in the new way through the transnational lens. Because I will speak about transnationalism of Polish Jews and the main implication this transnationalism has for the new ways we can research and understand the history of Polish Jews after the Holocaust. And in my opinion, it is relevant not only for the history of Polish Jews that were at the time in Poland, but for the global Jewish history after the Holocaust, because the main base of the talk and of the situation after the war is the fact that Polish Jews are a transnational community. Even more, most of the Polish Jews after the Holocaust very soon don't live in Poland but outside. But Polish Jews who are in Poland and Polish and non-Polish Jews who are abroad are part of one network, and we need to see post-Holocaust reality through this network. And this opens very new perspective of research and of understanding what happened in Poland after the Holocaust. And I hope that some of the things that you will hear today will be new for you. And maybe some of the things that you will hear today may sound controversial. So I very much invite you, to question things I say and to ask hard and difficult questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. And first of all, in order to understand the situation of post-Holocaust Polish Jewry, we need to look at the numbers, which, so
Here, let me hide this so that everyone can see.
yeah, and can I work with the highlights? Yeah,
You should be able to. Shall we try?
yeah, it's not done.
Oh, okay. So just
So
these two to go front and
Yeah.
back right there.
okay, they will be here. Okay, yeah. So first of all, in order to understand the situation of the Polish Jewry after the Holocaust, we need to see how much Polish borders changed and what was the numerical situation. First of all, the most important fact that defines everything after the war is the fact that in the Holocaust, more than 3 million of Polish Jews, more than or around 90% of Polish Jews were killed, perished during the Holocaust. And only around 50,000 of them, and estimations here vary very much, survived the Holocaust in these territories that became part of Poland in 1945. And as you can see, Poland shifted borders. What is gray on the map, it was the interwar Poland. This part of Poland was taken over by Soviet Union. And what is pink at the map, these were the territories of pre-war Germany that were now taken over Poland. And as many of you know, most of the Polish Jews who survived the Holocaust survived in Soviet Union, and around 136,000, 140,000 of them returned to Poland between February and July 1946. Most of them were sent to former German territories, that is to Western Poland, on the southwestern side of former German territories. So in July 1946, we had approximately 200,000 Jews in Poland, and most of them escaped the country very soon following the Kielce pogrom. Tens of thousands of Jews were fleeing Poland also earlier, still during the war or after the war, mainly due to a wave of anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic violence that took place in Poland between 1944 and summer of 1946. So as you can see, approximately altogether 300,000 of Polish Jews came to Poland or lived for some time in Poland between 1945 and 1948, but more than 200,000 of them emigrated from Poland already until autumn of 1946, which left Poland with around between 170,000 Jews that were in Poland in the years 1947, 1950, and 30,000 of them emigrated mostly to Israel after the state of Israel was established and Stalinist system was introduced in Poland between years 1949 and 1951. And the two great waves of emigration of Polish Jews followed, which are out of the scope of our today's talk, is in 1956, and second following anti-Semitic campaign of March 1968. And we have here even some people who were forced to leave Poland after this campaign. Usually, this history of Polish Jews in the first years after the Holocaust is understood, or it's thought in three basic main waves. That is the Israeli, American, and international historiography working or dealing with the first years of the Polish Jews after the Holocaust is mainly interested in Bricha, that is in so-called organized or unorganized flight or emigration of Polish Jews out of Poland, organized mainly by the Zionist movement. Another lens through which this history is understood, narrated, and researched is the research of the post-war anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish violence, and it is done in recent years both by American, Israeli, and many Polish historians, anthropologists. One of them you have even hosted a few weeks ago, as I heard from Professor Sterczys. That's another very important wave and direction of research about the post-war history of Polish Jews. Another stream of research that is mainly done by the Polish historian is this institutional history, very narrow, very political, very institutional history of Polish Jewish institutions in Poland after the Holocaust. What we lack, in my opinion, is kind of critical, deep, both political as well as social and cultural history of Polish Jews after the Holocaust that will be studied not only from this narrow local context, but from the transnational context. That would integrate also people, institutions, and decisions taken that were taken not only in Poland, but in the United States, Palestine, and future Israel, because all these decisions and people, institutions played an amazing role in Poland for the Polish Jews. And also, we need to look at this from the context, international context of the Cold War that was just developing, in the first years after the Second World War. These studies also should avoid this kind of teleological thinking that after the Holocaust, we have a linear history of demise of Polish Jewry, of Yiddish language, etc. Because, as I will try to show today, things that happened, let's say, in 1949 and 1950 were not known to people in 1946 and 1947. And at the time, it was not sure that, that there will be soon end of national Jewish community in Poland after the Holocaust. And in order to do that, first of all, we need to acknowledge the transnational or international character of the sources that are available for the research. And they were not so much used to write this kind of deep critical, political, social, and cultural history of the Jews after the Holocaust. Because, as you can see, you have a lot of amazing sources, archives outside Poland that store this fascinating history of Polish Jews after the Holocaust that were not researched for the purpose that I am speaking about it today. Because, for example, if you take under consideration how many things are in Israeli archives, they were mainly researched, again, from the standpoint of anti-Jewish violence or bricha, that is organized emigration of Polish Jews from Poland, but not from the standpoint of all other dimensions of Jewish life. And the same is with American archives and all other sources. Why these sources are important? First of all, they were created outside the communist control, outside the self-censorship, and for the purpose of organization, they were not communists and they were working in the West. So, for example, until 1950, first 5 years after the Holocaust in Poland, all the Zionist parties and youth organizations, with the exception of revisionists, were not only active but legal in Poland. All of them created their immense documentation, and all of this documentation was taken from Poland in 1950. So we have amazing sources about the Polish Jewish life created by the various Zionist institutions that are today in Israel, and they are just wait to be researched. The same is with the sources created by individual Americans or American Jewish institutions or American Polish Jewish institutions that were active in Poland, wrote about the situation of Polish Jews, acted in Poland, and they are stored today in American archives and wait to be researched. If you look at the sources, we discover very much kind of transnational situation of the Polish Jewish community, and the image of the situation of Polish Jews after the Holocaust that was very different from that what we tend to assume that was the situation. Here are the few quotations from New York Times and from various travelogues, that is reports from their trips to Poland of former Polish Jews, that 3 of them, Jankew Pat, Joseph Tenenbaum, and Shmuel Leib, Shmuel Leib Schneiderman, were former Polish Jews now living in the United States, and wrote the books about their impressions from their trips to Poland. And of course, they wrote a lot about anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish violence, a fact that most of the Polish Jews fought or tried to emigrate from Poland, but also they came to the former German territories and they wrote these sentences about the Jewish life in Poland. And I will not read the quotation because there is a lot, but you can see these former Polish, now American Jews reflecting on the situation of Polish Jews after the Holocaust, and still believing that some future, not only of individual, but of national Jewish community is still possible, that this future is full of, or this present is full of Jewish culture, Yiddish language, national and social coherence of Polish Jewish community after the Holocaust. Now, the sole fact that these people came to Poland, wrote about the Polish Jews, attests to the very strong transnational character of the Polish Jewish community. These people came as representatives of organizations, of Joint Distribution Committee, Jewish Labor Committee, Vada Hatzalah, Orthodox Organization, Jewish Agency from Palestine. All these people brought money, brought help. All these people took with them thousands of letters of Polish Jews sent or being passed to their relatives in, at the time, Palestine or Israel or United States. To give you one statistical or numerical example, just in June 1946, one particular community in Lower Silesia, this community of Reichenbach, about which Jankew Pat is writing in the second quotation, it was 10,000 people strong, and only in June 1946, there were 2,800 letters sent from the United States to these people that came to the Jewish community. It shows you how strongly transnational this community was. More than half of the official budget of the Jewish community in Poland was again financed and came from the United States and also from Palestine. And also especially these former German territories that hosted most of the Polish Jews after the Holocaust, and why there were so many Polish Jews after the Holocaust in former German territories is another story that I will not speak today, but they also hosted tens of Landsmannschaften, that is the organizations of Warsaw Jews, of Bialystok Jews, of Łódź Jews, that their headquarters were in the United States or South America, but they had their branches in Poland. And they again brought money, people help, and rebuilt the Jewish life after the Holocaust. Now, in my opinion, and I'm very strongly convinced, and there are thousands of sources that attest to it, the very sole fact that the Polish Jewish community was reborn in this small but strong, but in small numbers, but still very strong after the Holocaust, was thanks and due to this transnationalism. And it was not the anti-Semitism, not the Kielce pogrom of 1946, but Stalinization and breaking of the ties between Polish Jews and Western Jewish community in the United States and in land of Israel that stopped the development of this community, rebuild of Polish Jewish life, and started its demise. So my thesis is it was not 1946, but 1949 and 1950, and enforced by the communist state break of the connections between Polish Jews and the Western Jews, breaking this transnationalism. This was the end of the rebuild of the Jewish life and the beginning of its real demise. Until that happened, you had actually, and it's again another surprising fact, unexpected not only rebirth or reconstruction, but elements of continuation of pre-Holocaust Jewish life after the Holocaust in Poland. And I encourage you strongly to read the first quotation of Moshe Schulstein. Again, another former Polish Jew now living in France and being a prominent Yiddish writer, who wrote the book about his trip to Poland in 1946. And he writes about what he had experienced in Lower Silesia, that is in the former German part of Poland, writing that he hears a little bit of Vilna, a little bit of Częstochow, a little bit of Kolomea, and a bit of Lublin. A landslide, meet their landslide, they're telling to themselves stories. How was it in older days? People feel joy and connection. Now, Schulstein, as all the other people, Pat Tenenbaum that I showed you before, did not expect to experience this in post-Holocaust Poland, but they experienced exactly that. They fought and they saw the cemetery of Polish Jewish life. They've been in former Jewish shtetls. They've been on the ruins of Warsaw Ghetto. They saw the destruction. They saw the anti-Semitism. They heard or experienced the stories of anti-Jewish violence. But at the very same time, they found this rebirth of Polish Jewish life and the continuation. Now, why it was important for them? It was important for them also because being in central Poland, they were sure that they lost big part of themselves. They lost their childhood memories. They lost all the civilization that they could not experience already on immigration, living in Eretz Israel, in land of Israel, or in the United States, because with the immigration and creation of the new life, some of the things are lost. And they, to their amazement, they experience these things in this mostly in this western parts of Poland or in Lodz, which was at the time the city with the biggest number of the Jews after the Holocaust, Poland. And that was their experience especially in the years 1946, 1947, where there was still kind of semi-authoritarian or semi-communist political system installed in Poland. To be clear on that, communists very strongly prosecuted Polish anti-communist opposition, but still for Jews, in order also to get a lot of US dollars and of other foreign hard currency, they would allow for these transnational contacts of Polish Jews, and that that, as I said before, caused this rebirth of the community. This also shows us why Poland, being mostly a cemetery of Polish Jews after the Holocaust, was also important in a general identity discussions in the Jewish world after the Holocaust. What does the Europe, what does the Poland now means for Polish Jewish community? And as you can see in this discussion, the conclusions were still not there. There was a discussion, there were question marks. I want to return to one last quotation of Szymon Samet, journalist of Haaretz, who visited Poland in the beginning of 1946, who wrote his called his chapter on Birobidzhan Hasheni, with a question mark. That is the second Birobidzhan, asking if this Jewish experiment in Lower Silesia will be not the same as Birobidzhan experiment in Soviet Union. But he did not have a clear answer. As you can see, other participants of the discussion thought that maybe something very different than second Birobidzhan will happen. So again, it shows relevance of Poland, of post-Holocaust Poland, for a general discussions of the Jewish world. What is the Jewish civilization? Of course, the center of the Jewish civilization moved. It's now mainly in the United States, in Canada, in the land of Israel. But there is this still discussion that maybe, paraphrasing Ahad Ham, Poland will be this kind of a cultural Skansen, that some elements of the Jewish civilization that everyone thought were lost in the Holocaust will survive and be retained still in Central Eastern Europe. And this was the situation in 1946, 1947. And again, I want to underline that it's very easy for us to think today that these people could predict what will happen in 48, 49, and 50. But it was impossible to predict. What one could guess, but the future was not certain. And I will show you some other Zionist discussion on the topic that attest to exactly to that. Again, of course, it doesn't mean that the situation was perfect or ideal. The same anti-Semitism that was present in Central Poland was brought to the Lower Silesia, to the former German territories. And you can see the second quotation. This is the quotation that I found in one of the protocols of the one of the Jewish community in Lower Silesia, that is that somebody wrote the words of the state official, communist activist, Polish communist activist, in his conversation with a member of the Jewish community, that he said, "I'm against murder of Jews, but I would throw out all of them from here. Jews are parasites. We will not establish schools for them. I wonder why there are so many Jews here, why Germans had not murdered all of them. Jews in agriculture. I'm against agriculture training of Jews. The training is directed by Engineer Rosenman, an important Zionist activist, actually. As a Jew, he cannot know anything about the agriculture." Now, you can see find here the continuation of interwar and Holocaust anti-Semitism. Now, why it is important for us, that is important from this standpoint of transnationalism? Because you could not speak about anti-Semitism of communist officials or of these classes of Polish society that were considered important for the communist regime, that is anti-Semitism of workers, of militiamen, of military, openly in Poland. And you can see exactly after the Kielce pogrom, when government creates official discourse that Kielce pogrom was organized by the so-called remnants of the fascists and of the anti-government opposition, and the Jewish official discourse in Poland had to succumb to this narrative and sustain that they were the former fascists or remnants of fascists that are responsible for anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish violence. Now, because of the transnationalism of the Polish Jews that they had, they could unofficially state that actually anti-Semitism is penetrating all the layers of Polish society. And for example, if you can see the things that Jankev Pat wrote in Forwards, one of the people that I showed you before, he wrote about his 1,000 conversations with Polish Jews that spoke openly about anti-Semitism of militiamen, of soldiers, and some of the members of the Communist Party. And again, these transnational connections were enabling Polish Jews to voice the truth about their situation, to express their true feelings, and also this. Until this transnationalism was present, it gave some feeling of relative safety. This feeling, if something bad will happen, I can always go abroad. And that was indeed the situation. It doesn't mean that these 100,000 Polish Jews who stayed after the Kielce pogrom were confident that for sure they will stay in Poland. They did not know what they will do, but they decided to stay because things were getting better. But until they were sure that they can get help of American or Palestine, like Zionist organization, to be out of Poland, and it be safe to be out of Poland, they stayed. So it was also kind of the insurance policy. So it shows also the relevance of the transnational context, also for the study of anti-Semitism and for the study of immigration. Last quotation also shows what I tried to say before, that also political culture of Jewish community, and here is the quotation regarding the Bund, very important, interwar pre-war socialist party. There were some continuations of the forms of life, of elements of a political youth culture that were present in Poland after the Holocaust and after the Kielce pogrom. Now, all of this can be seen even more when you look at the activity of Zionist movement in Poland after the Holocaust between years 1946 and 1950. And Zionism was for sure, as a totality, taking under consideration all the parties and all the youth movements, the strongest political movement among Polish Jews. Zionism was much more popular than communism. Zionist parties and organizations had 10 times more people being members of these organizations than the Polish Workers' Party, that is Communist Party in Poland. And again, in activities and operations of Zionist movement in post-Holocaust Poland, you can find a lot of continuations of pre-war Jewish life. The same slogans, the same educational methods, kibbutzim, that is the collectives, industrial and agricultural collectives, the same uniforms, the same slogans, etc., etc. And you can find also something that transgressed the pure Zionism. That is what some scholars called Palestinianism or Eretz Israelism, general interest of Polish Jews in the rebirth and struggle of Jewish community in land of Israel for creation of the Jewish state. And this picture to the left shows you the assembly of Polish Jews in one of the Lower Silesian towns, actually in the headquarters of Polish Socialist Party at the time. They were in very friendly relations, and all these people listened to the radio broadcast about the UN decision regarding the partition of the Palestine. And you can see on this picture also, one on the low right, older Orthodox Jew. You can see children, you can see representative of the community listening to the broadcast, and all very much interested in the Jewish project, in the Jewish national project in Palestine. Again, in order to understand the activities of Zionist movement in Poland, you need to zoom out, you need to take a transnational lens, and you need to look what is happening in Munich, in Bayern, in Bavaria, where there are DP camps. You need to look at the activities of kibbutz headquarters in Palestine. You need to look into what's happening in New York, in Washington, D.C. You need to look what's happening in Paris, because decisions taken there have a direct influence on a Zionist activity and the Polish Jewish life in Poland. One short example, David Ben-Gurion visits Germany and Munich in September 1945. He decides, he sees the political potential of Jewish DPs being in German DP camp as a pressure point for Americans and English in order to open the gates of Palestine. Then he sends shlichim to Poland, that is emissaries, who are supposed to animate the flight and immigration of Polish Jews to the DP camps. And you can find right away the relevance of this on the ground. Another quotation I will skip. You can then find the decisions, like you can find that there is a wave of big emigration of the Jews in summer of 1946 following the Kielce pogrom, and it was made also on the basis of decisions that were taken in Palestine or in Germany in summer and spring of 1946. But this 100,000 of Polish Jews approximately is not emigrating. And there is a big decision in the Zionist movement what to do with these people. And what is the most fascinating thing is that we associate the Zionist activities in Poland after the Holocaust only with Brycha and only with emigration. But as you can see these quotations, the Zionist activists acknowledge that tens of thousands of Polish Jews are still not ready or don't want to leave, they will stay in Poland. And there is a decision that until communists will allow us to be active and operate in Poland, we should be active and work among the Polish Jews and stay with them. That is, open Hebrew schools, continue activity, youth movements, etc. That is centered or not only on immigration, but until these people don't want to emigrate, is centered on building the diaspora Zionist culture. That is, you have again another continuation, the continuation of interwar policy or ideology of so-called Avodat HaHoved or Gegenswartarbeit, that is the work of the present. That is the idea that until Jews will not emigrate to Palestine, we need to create a Zionist culture in diaspora in the long term. And elements of this tradition are taking place, are continued in Poland after the Holocaust and after the Kielce pogrom. And again, if you look at this quotation in 47 or from 1947, these people don't know if and when there will be a communist crackdown on their activities. They are afraid. Some of them are persecuted. There are some conflicts with communists, and they see the rising communist pressure on activities of non-Zionist, non-communist Jewish political parties. But they don't know when it will happen and if it will really happen. And that's exactly that non-teleological understanding of history, understanding the protagonists of our research and reflection could not know what we know today. And the things were not so simple and obvious in 1947 as are simple and obvious for us today when we look backwards on the history. Another thing is that if you look on a deep kind of social and cultural history of Zionist movement in post-Holocaust Poland, we can see that it had the same structural problems as before the war. For example, if you organize the migration, if the Zionists were organizing the migration of Polish Jews, they first of all wanted to take on the road the most active, most capable, and most Zionist engaged young people, and they did it. But automatically, it caused a deep crisis inside the movement because most of the capable leaders left. So there was a constant controversy who should emigrate. And if you look at some research about interwar Polish Zionists, it was exactly the same problem that interwar Polish Zionists had. So another form of continuation of the Polish Jewish life after the Holocaust that we can understand if you look at this from the transnational kind of this wider lens, including different sources. Also, Poland was at the time visited by the leaders of the Jewish war. I don't know if I have given this picture. No, I didn't. But for example, it was visited by David Ben-Gurion, who spoke of the ruins of Warsaw Ghetto. It was visited by Yitzhak Greenbaum, that is the year after his visit, first internal minister of created state of Israel, a leader of interwar Polish Jews, who came to Poland in March 47 and gave actually a fascinating interview in Yiddish to the Morgen Journal in New York. And that's a fascinating interview for me because Greenbaum, speaking about his experience of Poland in March 47, says, it's terrible. I met these tens of thousands of Jews who are non-communists, and they're thinking that they will stay because they receive job, they receive, they kind of experience upward social mobility. They're pretty happy in this, half communist Poland, and they would not listen to me that they should emigrate. That's what Greenbaum said in the interview to the Yiddish media from the United States in March 1947. And again, this is the situation that we can see if we look wide in this kind of transnational sources. And altogether, we can see that this year 1947, that is the year, so-called year of stabilization, year after the Kielce pogrom, where anti-Jewish violence in Poland was stopped, but year still before the Stalinization, when this semi-pluralist political system, especially for the Jews, because Jews were treated in terms of their political rights better than other minorities, Ukrainians and Germans, for various reasons, and we could speak about it later on, that this was this year, that really tens of thousands of Polish Jews at the time, they were considering their future, long-term future in Poland, raising here their children, and etc., etc. And I also wanted to say that paradoxically, this was the year when the Zionist, I would say, culture in Poland after the Holocaust was the strongest, not before the Kielce pogrom, but after. Because At the time, it was already obvious that these tens of thousands of Polish Jews will stay. So Zionist movement was not only concentrated on immigration, but also in building these long-term institutions. So, for example, this is the area of maximum development of Hebrew schools in Poland that work along and compete with Yiddish schools that were run by the Jewish communities. Again, this is the situation in 1947, 2 years after the Holocaust. And this was the situation until 1948, 1949, when generally the Cold War hardens, the state of Israel is established, and against the expectations of Stalin and some other members of the Soviet government, Israel takes the Western direction, and thus there is a crackdown on Zionist activity in Poland. There is a crackdown on all transnational Jewish connections. JDC, Joint Distribution Committee, all other American Jewish institutions activity in Poland is forbidden, stop. Communities cut from these transnational connections. Then what follows, 5-6 years of the most authoritarian period, close to even totalitarian. I would never call it totalitarian, but very authoritarian period of general life in Poland, where all Jewish connections to the West are suspicious, are dangerous, and Polish Jewish community is very much strongly kind of surveilled because it has a very strong international connections. But what I want to show you is even this year 1950 is not totally kind of finishing this transnational, or I would say subjective or non-communist ways of life of Polish Jews, because as you can see in the first quotation made by this is the information gathered of one of the CIA informants. For sure, it was a Jewish informant in one of the Lower Silesian towns. Guys speaks about this kind of Jewish reservation, but what he means is that there is a strong Jewish community, that there are many Jews in very many important positions, that some streets have a Jewish names, and there is this collective farm, the PGR, or the kind of form of Polish kolkhoz that was renamed Arbeitsman. It does not have a name Arbeitsman, but that's the name of the guy who established this farm in 1945 and was one of the most important Jewish farmers. But you can see, the Jewish vibe of the town in Poland in the middle of the Stalinism. And what is most important is this part of the sentence: Dzierżoniów is the center of antique trade for Lower Silesia. Local Jews still do a good business buying and selling old furniture, pictures and carpets. It is said that these merchants have some contacts with antique markets in Western Europe. This is exactly the transnational context. There are some people who have friends or family members who emigrated to Germany, emigrated to Vienna, and through these connections, they can still, sustain their living in a very orthodox, very uncommunist way. And you have another quotation that shows also the elements of religious life present in Poland, during the deep Stalinism. And I don't have time to speak about that. And framework of our talk is 1945, 1950. But I want to strongly underline that elements of religious Jewish life were present in Poland up to the end of communism in 1989, both officially and unofficially. So, and this included also the time of Stalinism. So, to sum up, I wanted to say that all this has some implications to the way, in my opinion, we should research and understand the Polish Jewish history after the Holocaust. First of all, as it was already done in studies of Soviet Jewry, and it was done by some of the people who are here, Anna Stenshis, Miriam Schulz, and many other people that you might probably know or you read their book. Like, we should get away from this linear, simplifying paradigm of red assimilation, of, Jews dissolving their identity, cultural traits in this, communist project, that some developments, some things that happened to identity, consciousness, and culture of Polish Jews after the Holocaust are very different to the things that happened in the West, but some of them, they're very similar. As we have in the West United States, in Canada, and a few other places, kind of evolution from nationhood to peoplehood. The same things are happening in a little bit different, but a little bit in a similar way, also in Poland, as they happened in Soviet Union. Fact that Jewish identity become more and more secular, again, it's not a specific communist Soviet, communist Polish thing, but again, this is a phenomenon that it's kind of universal, and we can understand when we look at it from this normalizing transnational lens. Urbanization, fact that these people from Lower Silesia, they showed you moved to Łódź, to Warsaw, that people who were interwar tailors and continue to work as tailors in post-war Poland, but their kids go already to university, get a higher education, and succeed in life after emigrating to Israel or to the United States in 1956, in 1968. It's another sign of professionalization, of getting the higher education, basically the similar social phenomenon to that what happens in the West. Yes, so not neglecting the anti-Semitism, not neglecting what happened in Poland, that is the popular wave of anti-Semitism in 1956 that made many thousands of Jews emigrate. Not neglecting the 1968 March campaign that happened in Poland and caused emigration. All this was the fact, but next to it, there were all these social developments that made Polish Jews kind of, they were not strange, not weird, not kind of unnatural, but they lived similarly and they made the similar choices, and they were part of the same universal process that Jews from the Western parts of the world. And there is much more to the Polish Jewish history after the Holocaust as to the Soviet Jewish history than just assimilation, than just anti-Semitism, than just losing or neglecting their own Jewish identity. The same is about the Yiddish culture that, as we could see, was present in Poland after the Holocaust, that again went through the process of demise, especially after 1949. But again, many of these people kind of continued to speak Yiddish with their parents, spoke Yiddish less and less daily, but Yiddish came through the same process of vernacularization as it came in American or other Jewish communities. And and many similar, many other things happened in a similar manner as they happened in other parts of the Jewish world. And all of this, in my opinion, gives us much more sophisticated, deeper, and much more empathic historiography that allows us to much better understand protagonists of our research, the decisions that Polish Jews made in the end of 1940s, in 1950s, and in 1960s. And all of this creates much deeper non-teleological historiography that allows us to better empathize and understand the protagonists of our research. I wanted very much to thank you very much for your patience, and I very much look forward to your questions and discussions.